Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for The Last of Us Episode 4. Hello, my name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome to X-Ray Vision, the Crooked Media podcast where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture.
In this episode on Previously On, we're going to be talking about the buzz from the DC Slate announcements.
The buzz.
So
much buzz, baby.
How it may have been affecting some comic book sales in a potentially positive way. In the Airlock, we are going to be talking about episode 4 of The Last of Us on HBO Max, which sees a favorite of ours enter the fray. And in Nerd Out, we have a theory about Deadpool entering the MCU, which you know we're excited about because we love theories.
Of course, if you want to jump around, check the show notes for timestamps coming up Previously On. First up, more DC news reaction to the DC news of last week when James Gunn and Peter Safran unveiled their much-awaited DC slate. And folks, it's a hit. Or at least
People
the buzz is very positive. We were very excited by it. Every DC comic fan, every comic fan I know was super, super excited about it. A friend of mine who is a TV writer was like, I'm talking to my agents trying to get that Booster Gold gig.
You know it.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I know that this is not the only stuff that they're trying to adapt. Like James said, this is the chapter. So I'm like, it's time to be going to DC. I got a little pitch. I got a little plan for a certain Vertigo comic. You know, I think a lot of people do. So I think it's an exciting time. Yeah. And one of the big news bumps was kind of this, James Gunn did something that a lot of people in this industry do not do. James Gunn directly shouted out the comics that would be influencing these movies. And that tweet went off and everyone was like, more people need to do this. Marvel, you need to do that. And he specified, as we said, it was Batman and Robin by Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely. We had Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow,
All-Star
Superman. We were right, by the way. We were right. Basically, what happened was a lot of people decided they wanted to buy these books. Now, I know from anecdotal evidence this is true. My comic shop, Pulp Fiction in Long Beach, they had a lot of people coming in to buy those books. And then James Gunn did a tweet where he basically kind of shared some reporting about how some of these books were selling out on Amazon. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow was one of them. Now, look, the comic book selling industry is very messy.
It's inefficient.
It's
always been inefficient.
If you remember, we were talking about it when Hawkeye was coming out. The collection by Matt Fraction and David Ayer had actually been out of print for a long time, and they didn't get it back in stores. When Invincible came out,
there's only two printing houses. I'm going to get this wrong, but there's very few printers that actually do this work. So there's a huge bottleneck.
Very few distributors. So when they say, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow has sold out on Amazon, that means they don't have that any left in their warehouse that they're stocking from, but you can go to your comic shop and try and buy them. But this is great news because it's always good to see comics selling, and this is the impact that it can have to actually say, this is the comic we're basing it on. If you think about Marvel, it is very rare to hear them say that, even when something like Captain America Winter Soldier was directly based on a comic, they were not out there promoting that. So this is very cool. I love to see comics selling. I think it's very buzzy and kind of like an interesting technique. But if it basically bullies Marvel into shouting out comics creators and comics, I'll be happy. I'm like, James Gunn, you're doing good work.
I wonder if that will happen more now. They do kind of obliquely gesture at the arcs and the creators, both with thanks in the movies and kind of who they invite to the premiere and stuff. But this is the most overt kind of here are the comics this is coming from kind of statement we've seen in this space. But I will say also that it's really cool that we're seeing the comics sell out. I think whether or not that's accurate, the buzz around it, it's a great look. And secondarily, James Gunn directly shouting out the comics, I also think is, on the one hand, he should do it, and it's a thing to do. From a more cynical point of view, it's also the way that James necessarily gestures to the DC fan base that's been there, been active, been hoping for this kind of statement for years, as a way of saying, hey, we know what we're doing. We know where this stuff comes from. I've read this stuff. I know about it. I'm deeply versed in it. How many times have we heard James in that statement and other times say like, oh, DC means a lot to me. I've been reading, I've been in that universe since I was a kid. And so this is more of that. And
it's very clever.
A rising tide of interest hopefully will lift all boats.
I totally agree. Also, and I mean, you can even see, I think the thing that's going to appeal to Marvel, Disney, other places about this is like, whatever the reality of selling out, which is such an exciting kind of terminology, is the Amazon top comics bestseller list is reflecting people's interest in these books. And everybody loves to make money who's a corporation. I will say, James Gunn, this is so cool. I'm so glad you're doing it. Like everyone, the next step of this is like, make sure you're just shouting out those artists. The comics don't exist without the artists. Bilquis Evely also made Woman of Tomorrow. Frank Quietly made All-Star Superman, Batman and Robin. Like, that's the one thing is I think we're still stuck in that idea of like Tom King's Woman of Tomorrow or Grant Morrison's, All-Star Superman. But I'm not expecting a full creator credit. You don't have to shout out the letter as much as I would love that. But let's just get to the point where when we share those comics, we're shouting out the artists too, because this medium doesn't exist without them. But yeah.
That's right.
I love to see it. Also, I was very happy because after the Swamp Thing announcement where they were like, it's going to be a dark horror story, directed by James Mangold, we can now pretty firmly say he's in talks about it. They then shared the Alan Moore Swamp Thing first volume and said, this is what it's based on, which is like a sexy, weird, like romance book. So I'm happy about it. It's going to be great.
Up next, the Airlock. Well, we're stepping out of the airlock and into a piece of shit Chevy pickup truck.
That feels like a spaceship.
This feels like a spaceship as we road trip west into episode 4 of HBO's The Last of Us. This episode titled Please Hold to My Hand, written by Craig Mazin, directed by Jeremy Webb. And we open with Ellie pointing a gun into a mirror and basically doing tax or... Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? She's got her gun. She's making a little pew pew sound. She pops the mag, checks the rounds. She is so excited to have her weapon.
Let's say congratulations to Ellie. She is she manifested this. She wanted a gun. She asked for a gun.
She made it happen.
She found a gun. She made it happen. And guess what? She was actually right. She does need a gun, and we're going to find out why very soon.
Ellie got a gun. She's practicing with the gun, making little pew-pew sounds. She pops the mag and checks the rounds. And then she returns to Joel. They are at a rest stop. Joel is siphoning fuel, and he's telling Ellie both why they need to do this so often, because gas, as I have been railing about in the X-Ray Vision Discord, gas breaks down over time. Like if you just leave it in the tank, it'll break down over time, get yet less effective. And so Joel is having to do this a lot, and then he's explaining the physics behind how siphoning works, and Ellie is roasting him because clearly he doesn't actually know how it works.
It's when liquid travels against gravity because pressure.
You don't know.
I know it works.
And then things take a turn for really the dangerous, the tragic. Ellie pulls out a book of puns. That's right, folks. It's time for jokes. She says, what did the mermaid wear to her math class? An algebra. And Joel is like, fuck this shit.
He is done.
He's absolutely fed up with it. They continue on. The road in this part of what is officially the Midwest is just littered with vehicles. Ellie is like, oh, I want to see a tank. I hope I see a tank. And Joel's like, you will. There'll be a tank out here because the military was all around and very active in those days, and you will definitely see a tank. Ellie shows Joel a bunch of stuff that she scavenged from Bill and Frank's in that all too short a time that they spent at the late
far
Bill
too
and
short.
Frank.
Big mistake.
Far too
They're
short.
going to regret it.
First one, a Hank Williams cassette. Okay.
Joel's kind of into it. She shades
Joel's
him a
kind
bit.
of into it, yeah.
She's like, you're old, you like this? And he's like, no, that's before my time, but actually it's a banger, so put it on.
Yeah, put it on. And then next up, a bearskin magazine.
Dun, dun, dun.
Little porno mag action. And this makes Joel tremendously uncomfortable, which Ellie loves. And then Ellie says, by the way, in exchange directly ripped from the video game, as much of this episode actually was, she says, well, why are the pages stuck together? And Joel is just like,
and she's like, no, I'm fucking with you.
yeah, I'm fucking with you. And then she throws it out the window, which I have to say, this is a mistake-laden episode. Our characters make a ton of mistakes this episode, and I would argue, and I'm dead serious, I think this is one of them. Like, that has value to somebody out here.
Dude,
like,
I'm
you
saying in a bartering, trading world, how much gay porn is there left in this world? I don't know.
Not a lot.
Frank, not a lot. And this is a physical magazine. Also, base level, you could use it for fuel. Like, you could burn it. Do you know what I mean?
You could burn it.
I feel like these two are not surviving. They're getting a bit comfortable, as we will see multiple times through this episode.
You can't get a lighter? 2 lighters or something for
you know what I'm saying? Like, there's probably one person who will give you like 1 ration card, like, or just like some information, or just like making a friend. You know, like and Joel's not really a friend guy, so an alliance. It seems silly. Also, I will say, I was very happy to see Ellie's bad jokes making it into the show, because that's again is like another key. This episode is just like straight from the game. Yeah. But yeah. As soon as she threw that out the window, I was like,
hey, don't do that.
Don't do that.
We
like,
might
what
need
are you
that.
thinking?
Yeah. They drive on, and at dusk, Joel pulls off the road. They make camp at a clearing in some woods. And for dinner, 20-year-old Chef Boyardee. That guy is good, Ellie says.
I'm going to say scientific here, yeah? I've seen people open 20-year-old cans of stuff. It doesn't go that well, but I like the intention. And you know what? I like that her and Joel agree on this. Chef Boyardee is good.
Yeah, did they have that in England? Chef Boyardee? Did the chef make it over there?
They don't have... He never made it there with his Michelin-starred canned restaurant. he was like, it's too far. But they do have... they have like very, very similar... Heinz actually makes like very similar situations in England.
Okay. They're making camp, they're eating, and talking about the trip ahead. Joel figures, okay, if we get out of here by first light, we should make Wyoming by the day after, which is a good time. Ellie asks if they can light a fire. She's cold. Joel says no. And not because, as you might expect, because there are zombies out here. That's the infected, or I guess this is too sparsely populated an area for there to be a pressing danger of infected, which I would still be like, fuck that. No.
I'm like,
scared of the infected. But because of people. People might see the light. People might see what's going on. I would, as people on our Discord were saying, why wouldn't you sleep in the bed of the truck? I would sleep under the truck. Like, I don't care if you tell me.
I like that.
I don't care if you tell me that there's no infected out here. I'm still like, fucking.
I'm sleeping like under the chair in the front, under some tarps. Like, I'm hiding.
100%.
Joel's a very comfortable guy. He's very chill. Too comfortable.
We will get to Joel being way, way too comfortable very soon. They lay down to sleep, and then Ellie has a very, very serious question for Joel. She says, Joel, why did the Scarecrow get an award? And Joel, after a beat, says, because he was outstanding in his field. You dick, did you read this? And we get the first real smile, crack of a smile.
It's like
from
it's
Joel.
a little edge.
You love to see it. I was just laughing about, okay, we're not going to build a fire because what if people see? How bad would it be to get killed by raiders because they saw you light your flashlight to read a book of puns?
I know. Seriously. I get it. Like, the thing I love about, and we're obviously like ragging, the show's amazing, the episode's amazing.
We love it.
The point of the whole story, as we saw the last episode, as we kind of get to see, it's about finding joy and those moments being worth that risk. But in the moment when you're watching it, you're like, guys, don't get your head chopped off by a guy with a machete to read a joke. Like, please.
It is very good that they feel less fear. Mm-hmm. They live in this world. Ellie was born in this world.
Exactly.
Yeah. She doesn't, as a kid doesn't necessarily feel the danger around her, but it's like if you airdrop me into 2023 of plus 20 years of an outbreak of fungal zombies, I would be a mess all the time.
If I survived, I would be stressed. I would
Constantly
be the world's
stressed.
most. I'd be more of a Bill pre-meeting Frank. Like I would be like locked in my house. But you know what? I think something about this episode is after the power of episode 3, this could maybe feel a bit like a lead-in episode or kind of an intro episode. But actually, I do think there is so much small, nuanced time that we get to spend with Joel and Ellie here that you're really getting to see that bonding. And the kind of part of the too comfortable situation they're in is because they're getting comfortable around each other. And they're starting to feel like there's someone.
You love that. You love to see that.
Yeah, you love to see it. It's going to end badly currently, but I do love to see it.
The next morning, Ellie sees coffee for the first time. She is confounded by it. It stinks. Joel is like just slurping it up in the car, making fun of her for thinking it's gross. To which I was saying this in the Discord. You know they're just ripping ass in that car. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no modesty, right?
No,
it's not like you're not hiding it. Like
Not in
they
this
just
world.
ate a can of 20-year-old Chef Boyardee and chased it with 20-year-old coffee. Absolutely, there are big time farts being ripped in that car.
It's happening, and they're just like going with it because the truth is that you're probably going to see someone turn into like an evil fungal monster at some point. So it's like if you just be farting, like, oh well.
Yeah, Ellie's like, so tell me where you're going again, and Joel is like, so we're gonna. My brother Tommy, the last time I heard from him, excuse me. So last time I heard from Tommy, he was close to Cody, Wyoming. And Ellie's like, yeah, let me just check the map. Oh yeah, that's way up there. So that's very, very far out. And then Joel opening up now, because recall, it was not that long ago that Joel was like, hard rule, don't ask me about my histories and I won't ask you. Now all of a sudden, Joel is telling Ellie about Tommy. He says, Tommy is what you call a joiner. Dreamed of becoming a hero, so he joined the army right out of high school. A few months later, they shipped him off to Desert Storm. 12 years later, Outbreak happens, and he convinces me to join a group making their way up to Boston. And Joel basically says he did to keep an eye on Tommy, keep him out of trouble, and that's where he met Tess. Some point after Tommy fell in with Marlene and the Fireflies, and Joel says of that same mistake he made when he was 18, he wants to save the world. And last Joel heard, Tommy had quit the Fireflies, and now he's, I guess, floating around on his own somewhere out in Wyoming, doing who knows what. Ellie asks Joel a very important question, which is, how does he keep going without any hope that the world can be better? Like, how do you just do that? And Joel says, basically, you don't understand what life, you haven't seen the things I've seen. You haven't been out here. I've been out here. I understand what the world is. Like, you see this hopeless existence that I'm living. I'm living a realistic existence. You don't understand that. And then he tells her, you keep going for family. That's about it. Ellie is like, oh, like me? and he's like, no, not like you. I made a promise to Tess. That is who I'm doing this for.
You are cargo.
You're cargo, flat out.
I think you actually make a really good point. I actually think this is more of like a defense mechanism because, like you said, Joel had said, oh, don't talk to me about my family. Don't talk to me about this. And then suddenly he's like opening up, talking about this person that he also doesn't even really talk to Tess about. Like Tommy is like off limits because of their argument and their beef about the Fireflies. But then he's just telling this girl. So it's that moment when she's like, so am I family? And he's got to be like, no, you're cargo. You don't mean anything. Because he has to cut. Yeah, it's such an iconic moment. And it's like, you're just cargo. It's like, sure, bro.
Not to mention, there's going to be more moments that call to mind Sarah, and particularly their last night. But like, here's Joel in the truck with a teenage girl in the apocalypse, you know,
and
like
Tommy's still in the conversation. So it's
Tommy's
almost
still
like
in the
that
conversation, you know, like it's happening again.
Actually, that's such a good point because also when Sarah and Joel first escape out of the car, all Sarah's doing is asking about Tommy. Where's Tommy? How do we get back to Uncle Tommy? We can't leave him behind. So even that conversation coming from a different place with Ellie, who just wants to have more context, she's also still asking, where's Tommy? Like, that's such a great point.
And then he says about Tommy, you know, Ellie asks, how can you be sure you're going to find him? And Joel says, I think the one most important thing about him as a character. I'm persistent. Joel, as we are going to see in this episode very shortly, when Joel gets an idea in his head, you can't get it out. You're not going to get it out of his head. He's not going to change his mind. For better, often for worse, and hopefully for better. Ellie nods off. When she wakes up, the truck is on a highway entrance to Kansas City, and the way through is, as one would expect, blocked. And it looks very suspiciously blocked. Like, it looks like...
It's purposefully blocked.
It's purposefully blocked.
And if you're a game guy here, and you're like, oh, this has been very close to the game, now we're diverging, you can basically just... Kansas City is standing in here for Pittsburgh. We don't know why the exact choice, but this is basically the chapter in the game that was Pittsburgh, and you will recognize that as soon as you see the blocked street.
They're stopped at this roadblock. Joel gets out to briefly kind of examine it, comes back. Ellie's got the map. They look and they're trying to figure out, okay, like how far back do we have to go before we can get around this? And then the answer must be too far. And Joel thinking about, you know, much like Bill thinking about resource management, how many times am I going to fucking siphon gas? How many times am I going to siphon gas here? Do I want to do that? And he decides, no, instead I'm going to Leroy Jenkins this fucking roadblock, and we're just going to cut through the city and find a way through. That's it. We'll be back on the road in a minute. Tops, he says. Of course,
it's not
that's
Escape from New York, bro. This is a bad idea. Like, just
why are you?
please. Just
it's
go
like
back.
Horror movie 101. Don't do this when he does it.
They literally just came from an area where it was so uninfected and so just no one there that they could sleep outside. Like, just go back and find a different way around. Do not go through the city. This is especially dumb because, as Joel is about to reveal, he has also been on the other side of this.
He's done ambushes before. So what happens? They get an ambush almost like immediately.
Shocking.
They're driving past what turns out to be the abandoned QZ. Something has happened to the QZ where it's the doors are flung open and Fedra has been either overrun or overthrown. And as soon as they see that, they see a guy down the road who appears to be injured, and he's calling for help. Joel immediately sniffs out that this is an ambush. He floors it. Next thing you know, a cinder block is crashing through the windshield. The truck is running over a board studded with nails. Next thing you know, the truck is getting shot at.
Joe really flopped this one. Like, it was just a bad idea. He should have reversed as soon as he saw the guy.
And next thing you know, the truck is crashing into a garage. Now,
Bill's nice truck after all this time.
I will point out a couple of things. One, the batting average of riding in a truck with Joel is bad.
Odds are against you. The odds are not in your favor.
Number two, I will point out that immediately Joel is like, are you hurt? Are you okay?
Yes.
Because why? Because here it is. It's happening again. He's riding in a truck, running from danger with a teenage girl, and immediately he's
the problem again.
His stubbornness caused it.
Because with Joel and Tommy, it's this same thing. When then the opening night with Sarah is like, he's convinced they have to just keep going through. They have to keep going through, and he makes that same mistake here again. He could have reversed. They could have gone a different way around. They could have gone a different route. America is a big country. He knows he fucked up, and here again is a teenage girl who's in his care who suddenly has to deal with. It's not just a car crash this time, it's an ambush. These are not infected. It's like we're getting to that play. This is that important pivotal episode that we've kind of been hinting towards and talking about in all zombie lore. And yes, the infected are not undead. The cordyceps cannot bring the dead back to life, but zombie is a catch-all. You know, it's the ghouls, it's the cordyceps infected, but you know, they are not the real threat. The real threat is the humans. That's always the way in all of these stories. Whether it's The Road, whether it's, you know, Night of the Living Dead, the real threat is humans and the brutality that they will enact to protect themselves. Or, you know, think about The Walking Dead. You've got cannibals. You've got all kinds of different spaces and people who will do whatever they need to do to survive. And Joel just realizes he's put Ellie into that very situation that he's allegedly been trying to kind of avoid and protect her from.
And so here is Joel. It's his mistake and he knows it. He may have just consigned a girl in his care to death, just as happened years ago. He's freaking out about it. Are you okay? This gunfight is going on. He immediately sends her to safety through like a hole in the wall to like hang out on the other side of the wall. He takes out two of the attackers with his gun, loses sight of a third who sneaks up behind him, gets the drop on him, and now it's one of those famous smash square button kind of fights where Joel is trying to hold off this guy that's on top of him.
And the guy's like choking him with a gun.
Choking him. Ellie is watching this happen, and she realizes, oh, I have a gun. She gets her gun out of the knapsack, walks up, shoots the guy in the back. Now it is this really, I thought, affecting moment where it reminded me of the kind of the death at the end of Saving Private Ryan, where like Upham is like, not Upham, I forget the name of the character, who's just like, as the Nazi is about to plunge the knife into his chest, is like, oh, no, let's time out. You know, like now this guy who is very young, a young man.
Yeah, you realize he's basically a kid.
Yeah, is like, oh, no, we're not fighting anymore. I'm sorry.
We're friends. I didn't understand.
Yeah, we didn't need to do this. Like, hey,
my
my
knife.
mom.
This is a good knife.
My mom is close by. You could take me to her. Begging for his life, pleading for his life in a way that honestly felt like this is what I would do. I would beg for my fucking life.
And it's so sad because it shows that the way, the disassociative nature of what people are having to do in this world. He was ready to kill Joel and Ellie, like a little kid. He was just ready to do it. But the moment that he realized that he was on the other side of it, he suddenly has this human realization of, oh my God, I don't want to die.
It was so affecting and I think important to do because this is a story based on a game in which, in the course of carrying out the story, you, as Joel, will likely kill 300, 400, like some large amount of people. And so here is a really important moment where that taking of a life is brought home, the importance, the impact of it
and you know
is
what?
brought into the story.
That's such a great point because I think something that's always dangerous and I'm someone, I love action movies, like I love John Wick, you know, a gun fu movie where you're constantly seeing people being shot. But something about gaming and like first person shooter games and games where you are always killing people, you can lose the impact of death. And instead of showing Tess and Joel killing hundreds of people, blah, 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 here, what you see instead is this incredibly intimate reality of what it's like to take a life. And it is such a responsible, heartbreaking, interesting
I'm glad they did it this way.
Me too, instead of him just like sniping someone out of a window, which you do in the game. You know, those kind of things like, or shooting someone from afar with a gun. There's so much emotion here. And then there's this really like scary, sad, kind of horrible, dread-inducing moment where Joel tells Ellie, go back through the hole in the wall, go away. Yeah. And the guy is begging Ellie, like, don't go because he's not going to do it if you're here. And Ellie just turns around and walks away. And the guy and you realize that Joel's going to kill him. So
Joel finishes the man off with his knife. And Joel and Ellie come back together. They now have to hide. They have to run from the reinforcements that they know are coming. And this is incredible acting by Bella because here Ellie she just killed somebody. I know she didn't finish him off, but she for all intents and purposes, just killed a guy and watched him beg for his life. And she is trying to play it off like she's I packed my gun up and I saw a tall building over there. We should probably get an advantage point. I'm good. By the way, I'm fine. Don't worry about me.
And this is where Joel, his paternal instincts start coming out because to him, this is something Sarah never had to do. And for some reason in Joel's like very blurry moral compass, the idea that a kid has to kill someone is really horrific. And he keeps saying, you shouldn't have to do that at your age. Are you okay? And Ellie's like, I'm fine. Like, let's just go. Like, I'm fine. You know, and you start to get some of that gameplay where you're hiding through the streets, kind of you got to stealth your way through, avoiding these, you know, they don't name them this, but we know from the game that this is some kind of representation of the hunters and people who are part of that hunter community. I think Neil Druckmann actually spoke about this in an interview saying that, like, this is going to be, they're going to serve a different purpose. In the show, they are in the game, they're direct antagonists without much more expansion. But as we see from this episode and the arrival of one of our favorite actresses who's about to turn up soon, Melanie Linsky, this is going to be a more complex and probably play a far bigger part than they did in the game.
As mentioned, Joel and Ellie head off. They're dodging armed patrols. They're looking for a hiding spot. And we go elsewhere in the city where we find Kathleen, played by Melanie Linsky, in what used to be a Fedra facility and surely is not now, a Fedra jail cell. She is interrogating a prisoner who we soon come to find out is a doctor, and she's reading a list of names. Clearly dissidents who are in hiding from her group. And I think the thing that we can kind of piece together from this and other conversations is Kathleen, whose family was unjustly wronged by Fedra, her brother apparently beaten to death in these very same interrogation cells. Kathleen sparked, led, whatever, a rebellion against Fedra, which she now is continuing to lead. And what is happening now is a mop-up operation where she is kind of organizing the hunt for Fedra collaborators so that we can only assume, be put to death, right?
And I think as well there's this implication here. In the game, the hunters, anyone who crosses their path, they call them tourists and they just kill them. And I think there's this implication where even if you maybe weren't connected to Fedra, if you show up and you came from another QZ, you're a Fedra collaborator. Like, there's no question here. This is just an assumption they make and they will kill you.
So Kathleen is saying, it tells this doctor, hey, my brother was killed in these cells. Like, what about that? And the doctor is saying, you were wronged. I'm sorry. But this has to stop, whatever this rebellion that Kathleen has fomented. And she says, I think something that's, really honestly is pretty authoritative. I disagree with her methods, but I think this is pretty strong. She says, this has to stop now, you mean, when you're in the cell. And she points out that now that this person who was protected and felt secure, now that he's put in danger, now that his skin is in the game, all of a sudden, oh, no, we got to put a stop to this. But previously, when the regime that he was supporting was doing the very same things that they are now doing, it was had very, very little to say.
And we know Fedra was literally like hanging people in the street.
Yeah.
Like they were brutal.
So the man points out that, while I was doing that under duress, I had a gun to my head. So she pulls out a gun and says, okay, what about now? Where are the people I'm looking for? And she is particularly interested in finding a man named Henry Burrell, who apparently put the finger on Kathleen's brother or perhaps the rest of her family to Fedra and is now in hiding somewhere in the city. Kathleen knows, and she desperately wants to find him.
She's like obsessed with him, and she kind of has this paranoid feeling that he's kind of planning something. This is his work, whatever.
Yeah.
She sees him as this almost like overarching puppet master of anything that's gone wrong in her life.
The interrogation is interrupted by the arrival of a patrol that is bringing back the bodies of the ambushers that Joel did away with. In Kathleen's mind, as you mentioned, Rosie, this is Henry's work. Henry, if he has a radio, he might have called in reinforcements, and this is them. And then in a rage at this loss of life, she goes back in.
There's a great line where she goes, can you save him? And they're like, no. And she's like, what if I had a doctor? And they're like, it's useless.
No, it's too late. She goes back in and executes him. This doctor, by the way, who at one point in the interrogation says, I delivered you. This is like the intimate bonds that are being torn apart here are really notable. And she says then to her gathered militia, she says, this is Henry's work, and he won't stop until we stop him. Find every collaborator and kill them all. And then Kathleen's people head off into the city, and they just kind of like knock down random doors and drag people off, apparently to be killed, like with proof. I don't know. Probably not. Does it seem like it? Joel and Ellie are watching all of this from a hiding spot. And this is exactly what Joel meant when he said people. You need to watch out for people. This is it. Well, watch this. And Ellie, continuing again to pretend like she's fine, has noticed a tall building a few blocks over. And Joel is like, yeah, I saw it too. This is where we're going to go. We're going to go there so we can get a vantage point and find a path out of the city. And this is the moment where Joel, kind of sensing this shield that Ellie has put up around herself, wants to basically take the burden off of her shoulders and put it on his, because he understands that he fucked up. He says, you're just a kid. You shouldn't know what it means to, it's not like you killed them. And Joel continues, saying, basically, I know how hard it is the first time you kill someone or you hurt them badly. It can be bad. And Joel also is doing this because, he's apologizing. He's saying, this is my fault. Now, he says it's his fault because he didn't hear the guys sneak up on him. Joel, of course, has his hearing has been damaged from years of shooting at people.
Oh, it's also hilarious because in the game, Joel has like super hearing.
Super
that
hearing.
You can like hear through the walls like you're in Spider-Man or Batman or any of those other kind of games. So that's like a good reconsideration of like grounding him in the real world a little bit more.
Agreed. Now, I would point out, and I think the character also knows, that it's not his fault because the guy snuck up on him. It's his fault because he decided to drive through this fucking city that was gonna obviously be occupied in some form of like, why did you fucking do that? So, he's apologizing, but in a very dad-like fashion. This actually like resonates. If anybody has ever had a parent apologize to them, I don't know about like your personal experience, but it's never really. They always obliquely do it and never truly come clean on the thing that they fuck up.
Sorry you felt that way kind of apology.
So here's Joel not apologizing, but also kind of like not apologizing for the thing that he actually did. And then Ellie says something important, which is that it wasn't her first time hurting somebody, but she refuses. Now it's her turn to close the doors and not expound on what that means. Joel then decides, you know what? We didn't stay at Bill and Frank's where I could have taught Ellie how to shoot in safety, but you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to do it now. He has Ellie take her gun out. He shows her how to hold it. And honestly, that's about it. He just shows her how to hold it.
Yeah, he's just like,
puts the mag back in and he hands it to her. We go back to Kathleen, where Kathleen's lieutenant, who I'm calling Thorold Greymane from Skyrim, he looks exactly like...
He really does.
He looks exactly like the blacksmith of Whiterun. He has some intel on Henry. Apparently they found the recent hiding place of Henry. And he leads Kathleen there. It's a attic somewhere in a building somewhere. There's cans of food there. And notably, child's drawings of like Superman saving someone.
This is like a huge moment because I think they do a really interesting job. Kathleen is created for the show. And I think they do a really interesting job of like, she's incredibly brutal and she kills someone in a fit of rage, but there's some kind of notion here of a revolution, of a community that she's protecting. It's more, so far it's been more morally grey than obviously evil. But then when you find out that whoever Henry is, and if you know who he is, if you've played the game, but if you don't, he's helping protect a kid. And that's the person that she wants to destroy and kill. And it's a very smart bit of visual storytelling.
I agree. This resonates too because, oftentimes we tell ourselves that we're doing something because of ideals. In this case, Kathleen supporting the revolution and, bringing to justice the collaborators who are trying to bring down our more just society after we've overthrown Fedra, yada, yada, yada. But really, it's clear through this that there's something personal. On top of this kind of political, scaffolding that she's erected, there is something deeply personal about her chasing Henry. Is this kid her child? We don't know, but it's clearly personal. They leave there, and then Kathleen's lieutenant, Thorold Greymane, is like, oh yeah, there's something else I have to show you. So they go to like a basement or a garage, and there they see the concrete floor is cracked, and it is slowly sagging down. And as it sags down, it's also like bubbling up, like something is pressing against the floor beneath there. Is it, for those who played the game, is this bloaters?
It feels like that's what they're hinting at.
Some kind of fungal balloon, like a bubble that will pop of fungus. But it feels like we're going to see bloaters. Yeah. Or some kind of infected break into the city. Thorold Greymane is like, should we tell the others? When do we tell them? And Kathleen's like, not yet. He's like,
classic
wait, what?
Bad leader
Classic
situation.
bad.
It's going to go badly for you, babe.
Classic bad leadership. She's like, yeah. Let's take care of this absolutely insane and meaningless
paranoia that I have
of two fucking people. One is like a guy and another one's a child, rather than deal with the obviously pressing issue of what appears to be infected
and like one of the worst
sewers.
Kind of infected.
Yeah. Anyway, Joel and Ellie make their way to the tall building. We get some wonderful co-op kind of adaptation from the gameplay where Joel is scooting Ellie up into a hole in the wall, the thing you do, a boost, a thing you do time and time and time again in the games. And they head up now this 40 plus flights of stairs to the top of this building. They'll go essentially as far as Joel's 56-year-old bones will allow them to go. On the way up, Ellie asks Joel, how'd you know we were getting ambushed? And Joel makes a very important admission here. He says that he's been on, quote, both sides of this, meaning he's ambushed people. He says further that he, Tommy, and Tess, the group that they were running with when they were going up to Boston, quote, did what they had to do to survive. To which Ellie asks, did you ever hurt innocent? You ever kill anybody innocent? And Joel doesn't answer, which I think clearly means yes.
Yeah, and I actually
yes
thought
or no
of
question,
you,
by the way, Joel.
I thought of you here because I think this is setting something up really interesting. So you talked about how the Bill and Frank relationship is this kind of like, it's like a mirror for Joel of like, what if he let people in and loved them in the way they wanted to be loved and respected their agency? I think this establishes another reflection of Joel, which is probably going to be Kathleen as we get more into the story. And that's the, what if you never learned that you shouldn't do that? Or what if you never put anything above vengeance or survival? What if you did the most brutal version of it? And I think that is going to be a very important tipping point for Joel to reconsider his any means necessary mindset, which is obviously going to lead to like the finale of the show.
I love post-apocalyptic zombie stories, genre stories like this. But there's always been also like an aversion I have to them. And the thing is this, that inherent in this kind of like setup is the idea that, hey, you're going to have to do what you have to do. And there's something about, listen, if you're looking for excuses to hurt and kill innocent people, you're going to have an endless supply of them in this story, in this kind of world, in this kind of story. And here's Joel. Joel, hey, we had to do what we had to do to survive. That may have been true in the moment. It may not have been true in the moment.
And also, you probably didn't have to do it as regularly as you did it. There was probably the times when you really needed to survive. Then there was the times that you wanted a truck, or you wanted something other people had, or you killed a family who didn't have anything. Or, you know, we know Joel's the kind of person who would leave a family with a kid at the side of the road if it meant protecting what was his. So we know, we can assume from this interaction that he's done some pretty terrible stuff.
And at least he feels bad. It's very clear that whatever those things were, they weigh on him. He's not particularly proud of them, or else he would have said, yeah, I did. What do you mean? Yeah, of course we killed innocent people. We had to. Joel and Ellie make camp on one of the higher floors here. Joel then does the Ethan Hunt trick from Mission Impossible 1, where he breaks some glass and he sprinkles the glass around, so that if somebody sneaks up on them, the glass will crunch and they will hear something. Why not also barricade the door? Don't worry about it.
He's like, don't worry, it's not
Joel's
way high
slipping. Here's the thing. He is 56.
He's
and
tired. Ellie had to bully him up the stairs.
Day. Really did. Like, call him an old man.
I also think we're getting to see something really interesting here, which is like, this is Joel without Tess, and I don't think he's really realized that she's not there. You know, he knows.
She's not at that level.
Like, he used to have this person who would always have his back, who would always be on his six, like blah, blah, blah. She's there. Tess is probably setting up some crazy trap. Tess is shooting someone if you're taking a sleep. Like, there was a level of comfort to the life they had in the quarantine zone, and Joel kind of seems to be a little bit stuck in that, even outside in this totally new city and this totally new place. Why didn't you barricade the door? Why didn't you know, there's many things that you could ask about what Joel didn't do in this situation. But you know what? He's trying his best. I believe that.
I think that all of this, I pointed out not to criticize Joel, but to say this is like really good character. This is this is a guy who's slipping.
Exactly.
He's 56 years old, and it's not like a 56 in a modern first world kind of context. This is a guy who's been living by his wits, living hand to mouth for 20 fucking very, very hard years.
Horrible years where he's done terrible things and lost everybody that he loves.
And he's just doesn't necessarily have his fastball right now, and I think he knows it. First, Joel asks what Ellie meant by not her first time. And Ellie, again, is not willing to expound on that. But Ellie asks, I think, an important question, which is, does it somehow, like, you get older, you kill more people, does it get easier? And Joel says, not really, which is not a thing you want to hear.
Not you want to hear, especially when you're like 14. But it's true.
Right. But it's also a thing I think you want to hear from Joel, because the last thing you want to hear is, oh, yeah, I'm just like in the game.
Yeah.
You know
That's a great
point. Where
point.
we're just
That's
like running through people.
Bad for Ellie, but good for Ellie.
Yeah, and good for Joel, because at least you know that his heart is still beating somewhere in there. Ellie tells Joel that, hey, I noticed you don't hear so well. Joel says it's because of all the shooting. Like you wanted a gun, now you got one. And I'll tell you, maybe you want to rely on the knife, which if the show is anything like the game, Ellie definitely will. And then Ellie has a really, really important thing to ask Joel. And she says, Joel, did you know diarrhea is hereditary? It runs in your genes. And we get a really great laugh from Joel now. The two of them laughing, it's a wonderful moment. It made me smile.
And it starts where he's like, he laughs and then he kind of tries to stop laughing and he's like, that is so fucking dumb. And then the two of them just lose it. And they're like, you're losing it. And they're just giggling. It's the first time we've seen Joel happy ever in the show, actually, even
ever, yes.
Even outbreak, but post outbreak, it's like his first smile. It's proper smile. It's his first laugh. And this is obviously a huge moment for the pair of them.
They go to sleep, and Joel is awoken by Ellie's panicked voice saying, Joel! And when he wakes up, he finds two people standing, a man and a child, young boy, standing over them, guns pointed in their faces. And we can only assume that this is Henry and Sam, the people who Kathleen has been looking for.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun!
Dun, dun, dun! And the credits confirm it. This is Henry and Sam. And if you are a game player, this is when your heart breaks in two. Just after you slightly sewed it back together after episode 3.
A shorter episode, 45 minutes. I think necessarily so, considering like kind of heft that they gave us in episode 3. But also an episode that really, I think, deals with a really smart and necessary thing, which is deal with the violence inherent in the game in a way that makes it feel weighty and real.
Yeah. I think that's really true.
Taking out that ambusher who is just pathetically begging for their life in a way that feels like, wouldn't you do this? You would do this, right? If you thought it was all going to be over now.
It
just hits so hard.
And it takes away that kind of like the aspect that anything like this can have, that like lone wolf, like you're the good guy with the gun. Like it takes away that element and adds so much more nuance and impact. And also I think it's really interesting to have that compared with the quickness and severity that Kathleen kills the doctor with. She walks in, she kills him. It's done. Compared to that kind of horrific time that we spend that shows us kind of the sacrifice of taking somebody's life. And also you get that, then compare and you balance that with Joel and Ellie bonding over these puns, these kind of quiet moments, him telling her about Tommy. I think it's like a really impactful episode that I reckon as well is probably this will probably be a big rewatch episode, I reckon, especially when you're talking about the revolution and looking at the seeds of that. Because at first it seems like Kathleen is just rageful for no reason. And then you start to put together the seeds and you think like, oh, okay, there's some kind of revolution that she's a part of, who was helping her, who wasn't helping her, these Fedra co-conspirators. Also, then you want to know, why do people want to help Fedra? Like, what version of life is that? Like you said, are they all under duress? And then to introduce these like huge fan favorite characters in the last moments of the episode. And then after episode 3, I feel like we're all kind of asking, like, are we going to get a Henry and Sam episode that is on a level with Bill and Frank, this kind of bottle episode that gives us more time with them? Or is this going to be a journey we see them on with Joel and Ellie? I'm very interested to see, but I just another great episode. And the writing on this show is just like so fucking good.
It's really well done. Thoughts on what's under the floor?
I think it's got to be a bloater. I think, we've seen clickers. We've had that really terrifying reveal. I think this is very interesting that the show is not leaning heavily into the horror right now. And it's kind of more these moments of teasing and these momentary big reveals like in episode 2. But I think once you get to that episode 5, you're over halfway through the season. I think that we're going to start ramping that up. I think we're going to see more infected. I think we're probably going to get a couple more brutal deaths. You know, the old like head on the broken glass move from the game, the kind of the Molotov cocktail situation. I feel like they're building in a lot of gameplay in this episode, and I feel like they might take that to the next level and bring a little bit more violence and horror as we get to that final kind of trail to the end.
Does Joel know about bloaters? Because in the game, bloaters are super rare, right? Like there's not like, it's the rarest of the boss level infected. You don't fight them that much. I wonder if this is a semi-new development.
I think so.
If anybody's seen them yet. You know what I mean? Like,
I think there's a world where somebody who's in Kansas City may have, but I think they're going to be new to Joel. He's been in the QZ. The clickers, him and Tess, that was the thing they were most scared of, in my opinion, from the performances, from the way they'd seen it. I think that you're on the path here where we're going to get like a what the fuck is that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of reaction from Joel.
Well, it's the show continues to be fucking great. We're going to continue our coverage with it every week and look for our coverage of the game also to come back shortly. Up next, a very entertaining Nerd Out.
In today's Nerd Out, where you tell us what you love and why, or share a theory, which we're lucky to have another great one this week. Joe is going to pitch us on how the Merc with the Mouth, Deadpool, a real beloved character at this point in both the games and the films, thanks to the Fox movies. Joe's got an idea of how he might turn up in the MCU. So, Jason, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Joe writes, after rewatching Deadpool 1 and 2 recently, the theory that I have is that at the end of Deadpool 2, when Negasonic fixes the time slider, or the good old Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
I love Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Still one of my all-time favorite inclusions and all-time favorite castings. Bring her to the MCU next.
Love Negasonic Teenage Warhead. After Negasonic fixes the time slider, something in how she fixed it is part of what will ultimately allow Deadpool to travel into the MCU continuity. Between Deadpool 2 and the X-Men Days Future Past movie, it's made clear in the Fox X-Men universe continuity that time travel is strictly linear and changing an event will directly affect everything else. However, when Wade uses the time slider and saves Vanessa, the linear effects would have avoided much of the story of Deadpool 2. Yet in the MCU, it's been made very clear that changing the timeline creates a splinter effect. Since Deadpool seems to be able to jump across these splinters now, I wonder if that's how he'll sneak into the MCU. I like this. I
think that is really smart. And also think about it. When did we last see a Wolverine, a.k.a. Logan? He was dead. So you know what? Having some kind of time travel situation would be very useful to getting Logan back into the MCU with a Deadpool, as we know the movie will be. Obviously, there's a variant potential, but after hearing Joe's theory, I'm thinking that the time slider, time travel, and the differences between time travel in the Fox universe and the MCU universe could really be a way to get Deadpool in here.
I agree. It feels like there's something there. Not to mention that, the pre-Marvel X-Men universe was just filled with time loopholes.
Oh my God.
And opportunities.
Speaking of Logan.
Yeah. And opportunities to pull these characters from almost any time frame that their movies took place in. I think that it feels like Joe's onto something here. I would not be surprised to see this.
Because our newest villain, Kang the Conqueror, who we're obviously gonna see in Ant-Man, and it seems like it will be the Conqueror iteration of Kang. That is a man who is obsessed with time. He can control time. He's a time traveler. Now, we know in the MCU, it is also going to be this idea of multiverses. But in the newest Ant-Man Quantumania trailer, they have this line where Kang says, every single thing that you see as life, I will burn out of time. So I think this idea of time travel and time being a malleable thing that's going to become ever more important to the MCU, I think Joe's onto something. This could be a we were right for the Nerd Out.
Thank you, Joe. If you have theories or passions you want to share, hit us at xray@crooked.com. Instructions are in the show notes. That's it for us. Rosie, any plugs?
You know where to find me, Rosie Marks, on Instagram and Letterboxd. And this week, I'm plugging the newly created Crooked Union. I'm very happy about this. Shout out to our comrades, our solidarity at with our Crooked Media.
We love the WGA East.
Love the
Big
WGA
fans.
East. This is great. Really happy that this is happening, and just sending all our support to all of our amazing folks at Crooked who announced that union movement today.
You've heard us talk about our Discord. We're going to ask you to join our Discord where you can meet and hang with tons of amazing fans. But catch the next episode on Friday, February 10th. And remember, bring you 2 episodes a week, every Wednesday and Friday on the podcast platform of your choice.
You can pick. And remember, you can also find us on YouTube. Subscribe. You can watch full episodes of the show now. Ones where we're on Zoom, like this, being very cool and virtual. Ones where we're IRL in the same place at the Crooked Studio. Follow us at XRV Pod on Twitter, where we're always doing cool stuff, sharing, answering questions, retweeting rad things, talking about tattoos. And check out our Discord. Me and Jason are there. Super producer Saul's been active in there talking about D&D. You never know who you're going to find in there. We got loads of cool friends of the pod. The guy H from June Pod's in there. And we got a bunch of cool listeners and fans just talking about all the stuff that we love. And we even recently did a really rad Last of Us giveaway. So we're going to be trying to do more stuff like that. So basically, join the Discord. It's great.
That giveaway, the winner of that will be announced on Friday's show this week. We'll be announcing that Friday. And we'll be doing, as Rosie mentioned, more giveaways like that in the future. So join the Discord. It's fun. 5-star reviews. We love them. We need them. We gotta have them. Here's one from AJ from PA. Love this pod. Thank you, AJ.
Oh, appreciate it.
Jason and Rosie are a great team to discuss all things pop culture. Thank you. They have great insight, and you can tell they truly love discussing and breaking down the content they are discussing. I especially enjoy how they relate the series they are covering to the source material. I only wish they would cover more shows because there is so much to enjoy in the various fandoms right now. Hey, you never know.
2 episodes.
We've expanded.
We're trying.
To 2. We're gonna keep. Maybe we'll keep going. You never know. Thank you so much, AJ, for the kind words. See y'all Friday.